All right, Clay, before we get to this episode, which is the curious case of Tuvok the Vulcan, we are going to have a little discussion about peak age. Do you have a peak age? Have you experienced peak age yet? And you can take that to be whatever that question means to you, if you have a peak.
My own personal peak age was probably 25 years ago. I would say I'm going to go by comic book rules. I say whatever age Batman and Superman are is probably peak age. So probably like early 30s.
Like the characters themselves are early 30s? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that how old Bruce Wayne? Yeah, I guess maybe that makes sense. Bruce Wayne always seems a little bit older.
Yeah, he's skewed. Well, it's because at this point they've aged all of his side characters up, but they've never aged him up. So he's like 38, and Nightwing is like 25.
Yeah.
Or 30. So it's like, okay, so he became Robin when Bruce Wayne was 8. It's just one of those things where you have to just not think about it, otherwise your brain's going to break.
Well, he started in an era where he would have seemed older too. Like he's not a 33-year-old in 2022. He's a 33-year-old in 1947 or whatever the hell whenever he came out.
Yeah, I would say early 30s for the most part, because that's like old enough to have your shit together and be like successful. But it's also young enough that you can still play professional sports pretty well.
Yeah.
And like your body hasn't quite started falling apart yet.
Take a chair shot. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 27 was a good age for me, I think. There's nothing specific about that. That's when the pieces felt like they were starting to come together, at least, which happened surprisingly late in life. But yeah, 30 felt like a big change. And however old I am now, feels quite far from peak after multiple back surgeries. I'm no longer rounding the bases the way that I used to, unfortunately. Yeah, 27 seemed good.
Everybody seems to have their like mile marker as to when they start to feel old. Like it's like the inverse of what we're talking about, where it's like nobody really is conscious at the time of what their peak of life is. But everyone has that mile marker where it's like, well, after this point, that's when I know I'm really old. And I've just recently met mine, which is I am now the same age canonically as Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
So
he's lost quite a bit of hair by that point too. But he's Homer from a different era. He's Homer from the 80s. Yeah, you squander your peak. Everyone squanders their peak, except for maybe professional athletes who are well aware of their peak, I guess. They're the only people that would actually be in the know about that. This one is called Innocence. It's the 22nd episode of the second season. A lot of twos. Came out on April 8th, 1996. Teleplay goes to Lisa Klink. Story credit goes to Anthony Williams. Directed by James L. Conway. In universe date 49578.2, 2372. In Innocence, Tuvok is trapped on a moon with a group of alien children who are disappearing one by one. That's not really true, is it? Don't two of them disappear?
Yeah, technically two of them disappear at the same time.
Yeah, so. This is not one by one. So the memory alpha blurb is wrong. We'll see if we can get past that.
You can't say trapped with children on a moon who are starting to disappear.
All but one.
By 2/3.
Just eventually, he's not going to have a problem because they can't take all of us if we just keep going by a fraction. That's the that philosophical question that was like stumped mathematicians for a long time until math came around to prove it, which is that say you shoot an arrow at a barn door, and it takes X amount of time to get halfway, right? Like the arrow always travels halfway, and you can always find a halfway point at the distance that it's traveling. So how does the arrow ever hit the door? Right? I guess mathematically they prove that, but I'm not smart enough to understand how the math of that would actually prove that it would work, but it does.
I have to imagine, and this is the brain of an art school student here, so I'm sure this makes no sense.
Vanishing point lines or whatever you're going to say.
No, I'm giving that caveat because math and physics are not my forte.
Yeah.
But I have to imagine it has to do something with like, you know, the arc of the arrow, because you're not shooting an arrow completely straight. So does the arc of the arrow, does somehow the falling gravity control make up for the lack of speed?
I think it's more a question of how is this possible mathematically, that it can be the case. If something is traveling and you can always find the halfway point, how does it ever get somewhere mathematically is the problem. So like they can obviously see that it hits the door, but like if you account for something is always not, you can always measure it as not quite there, then how does it ever mathematically arrive at that point?
Well, is that related to the you said philosophical, is that related to, I forget who it was that made the claim that you're never actually touching anything, it's all just a matter of constantly decreasing by half into infinity?
Yeah, that's basically, it's the same idea. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Innocence, the children episode with Tuvok on the planet. This is one of those. This is a classic Star Trek episode trope now, where if anyone just talked about what was going on, the episode's over in about.
Oh my God! Every single conversation with the Veil people, it was like, you don't understand. Well, then fucking tell me what's going on. No, we can't tell you. You don't understand.
To be fair, Janeway could directly ask too. They could directly ask what is going on, and they never do that either.
Yeah. That's when these things get really frustrating, because like when you're withholding information in a story, that's one thing, but when you're doing it, when you're actively writing around the ability to communicate that's when it starts to feel really contrived.
Yes. Yep. Really obvious. It's just like, and then you see the sort of, you just see all the strings of the script there too, where it's like, all right, we're going to set up these aliens to be assholes at first so that like it's sort of difficult to ask them the question about what's going on. And even though they're not really assholes, the woman who's in charge is going to be kind of a jerk, just because that makes it a little bit more like narratively difficult, I guess, for Janeway to figure out what's going on, even though she doesn't ultimately just ask the question about what's going on. But that
element I actually didn't mind, because I did there is something kind of fun about Janeway being, there's lots of talk about first contact and about it being this really great experience and how everybody wants to do it. And so I kind of like them undercutting it a bit by them having first contact with someone who just just didn't really care. Like, you know what? It's nice to see you. I'm happy you're in the neighborhood, but I'd like to get back to my spinning class now.
Space Amish, sort of. That seems to be like an inspiration for these guys. They're kind of, right? Am I forgetting, or did I not pay attention? Do they have like a technological reason they don't want to talk to Voyager? Or are they just private? That's their thing.
I don't know, actually. They don't really get into their culture at all outside of the aging in reverse thing.
Yeah.
Which, as everybody knows, the Amish also do. Yeah.
The Amish are the youngest population. They just all have tremendous beards after all that time. Yeah, Innocence is I thought this was it's an okay. It's fine. It suffers from that colossal problem of being annoying and having a strange reveal at the end and stuff like that. But I think on the positive end of it, it does kind of cement Tuvok as my favorite character on the show, because I think with any other character on the show, this would have been like a 1 out of 5 kind of episode. Yes, and he really saves it just through his portrayal of what a Vulcan is, to what the script seems to understand about the Vulcans. And he doesn't ultimately... Yeah, it's another one of these Voyager things that it seems scared to actually get into what Tuvok is kind of thinking about in this, like the context of where he talks about his kids, but is he sort of imprinting on these kids his relationship with his kids? It's not really discussed, but he carries it just because he's an interesting enough character, and the actor Tim Russ is good enough at playing him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that makes it work is kind of twofold. Because I think it's choosing Tuvok to be the character, and also the fact that Tuvok is a Vulcan who has children.
Right.
Because I think the traditional way they would play this is, oh, well, Vulcans don't know how to... It's hilarious. They don't know how to deal with kids. He doesn't have any kids. He's just a logic machine. He doesn't understand wanting a juice box before bed.
Yeah.
But he has 4 kids, so he has his own way of approaching stuff, and you also get this really fun thing where it allows him to play different layers to this character who is on the surface, not expressing emotion the way most other people do it. I think it's a really smart move. I wonder if it was intentional or if it was just like, oh yeah, he has kids that actually like because on the surface it makes sense for all the reasons I just said about like, oh yeah, well he's the uptight Vulcan,
crazy kids meets with the logical, rational
the crazy
Vulcan.
kids, so I wonder if it was like as they started writing, like, oh yeah, I forgot he's got kids, doesn't he? Well, that's interesting. But either way, I think it's the right move, and I think it's any other character on the show, I think it would have been unbearable.
Yeah, it would have been. A lot of the other characters probably just, as you're saying, they don't even really have any kind of in with kids because we don't know anything about them, like how they would relate to them. Do you think the show is saying anything about Tuvok's feeling towards his kids? Is it just the fact that he has kids and has experience and that enables him to deal with it, or is he being reminded of his own kids through these kids, and that's why he takes them up so easily?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of that because I mean, he obviously warms to them quite a bit as the thing goes on, and he goes out of his way to make sure that the girl is protected and has the opportunity to be protected.
Doesn't start off grumpy. It's just kind of the as you're saying, like you kind of expect him almost to do it like the Picard thing, which is that he just doesn't like kids at the start and then they grow
right. Yeah. The Alan Grant character arc.
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't really do that. They do to a certain extent, but that's again, it's born out of his Vulcanness, not out of his I don't like kids.
Right.
That thing.
Yeah. And it's I think he's really good. I think Tim Russ is excellent at him. We've talked about him being up there, just basically a Nimoy copy, but I think that it works on in a lot of different ways. I like the Vulcans portrayed this way. I think I found another kind of quality that I would look for in actors playing Vulcans, and I think it explains why I didn't like a lot of the Vulcans on Enterprise. The Vulcans, at least in my opinion, require an actor who can play them with a kind of grace to what they're talking about. Like Nimoy clearly had it, and Mark Leonard had it as Sarek, and Tim Russ has it. But it's it's hard to say. It's hard to define. It's like a grace mixed with like a gravitas of believing what they say when they say things that sells them to me. The Enterprise Vulcans all lacked that. They all felt like they were unimportant and like not considered. The Vulcans on Enterprise never felt like they were considering what they were saying in a way, and I think that that's important to them.
Yeah. The Enterprise. I think that there was a conscious choice to make the Enterprise Vulcans like less stuck up or less stiff.
Yeah,
and I think again we talked about it at length when we covered that show, but I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding of what Vulcans actually are about and what their whole deal is, and what makes a good performance.
Yeah, it's what makes them a good like character in these stories too. If it's like Soval talking to this girl at the end, it's like just a horrible conversation about whatever the hell is going on there. But you need I just like this. Like the Vulcans are clearly a sort of bastardization of Greek Stoicism, and like I think that what I really liked about this one is that I read Meditations earlier this year, which is the Marcus Aurelius book, and it's about the Stoics and whatever. And I thought that he captures a nice point of view here, which is what makes the Vulcans interesting to me. It's like they're just more like they're humans, but more thoughtful. Like it's almost less about the emotional control and more just the sense of like having a kind of wisdom that is supposed to be the way that they were designed, which is kind of like they are the next evolution of humanity in some ways. Like they're a little bit more advanced than we are because they're not so hung up in these, fickle fits of emotion or whatever. They sort of made it so that they have no emotion at all instead of the traditional Stoic outlook on stuff. But it's neat to have. It's neat to have a Vulcan who says a lot of things that make sense, and it just feels appropriate for the episode. And even though I don't think the script actually earns it by the end of it, it's kind of a bittersweet / straight up sweet ending with the kid and Tuvok. Even though how much you want to put into that depends on how much annoyance you get out of the fact that the girl doesn't tell him anything about what's going on. So it's one of those balancing acts, I guess.
I know. I was so caught off guard at the end where after acting like an 8-year-old for the whole episode, she's like, "You remind me of my grandson.
Ebenezer, my oldest."
You couldn't have told me that at the beginning.
They try to get away with it with Alzheimer's. They get very confused when they're old. They don't know where they are.
Yeah, I do think the thing that Tim Russ gets is that, the thing you're talking about the consideration of what is being said, because everything that he says, every line he delivers, it feels like it is a statement that Tuvok has considered before saying it.
Right. Yeah.
And and that's what makes it feel that much more important and like, not robust, but it gives it a little bit more gravitas. Thoughtful, yes. Yeah. And I never got that feeling on Enterprise from the Vulcans, and it didn't rub me the wrong way as much as it did you.
Yeah.
But especially seeing Tim Russ after that, I start to be like, okay, yeah, I get this now. I understand what the problem is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and maybe there is an argument that maybe it makes them a boring group of characters if you get too many of them that are the same.
That's the tough part. Yeah, that's the tough part. Is if you've got like 10 of them in a room,
yeah,
then I don't know, that gets kind of boring. But I mean, when you've got one of them who is sort of the voice of reason among other less reasonable people, I think it can be very effective.
Yeah, he's yeah, because they're kind of neat. They don't run into. I don't feel that the Vulcan characters run into the problem of always feeling like they are, like for lack of a better term, like a Mary Sue type character, which I feel they could get there kind of quickly. So I think that's always a neat way that they've always been consistently portrayed, is that they don't always have the answer to things, but their outlook on life is frequently kind of interesting to the episode itself, really. So like in a way that like the Klingon stuff kind of feels like goofy after, like if you have a Klingon character, eventually him chiming in on every issue is just going to get a little ridiculous after a while.
Yeah.
The Vulcans never get that way, and I think that's why they're kind of special to the franchise.
Yeah, and especially when you get a bunch of Klingons in a room, it's just ridiculous.
Right. It's just so much a back slapping and chest thumping going on. Yeah, the Ferengi are the same way. When you get a bunch of Ferengi together, it's like, this is not a real scene,
Speaking of the Ferengi, went to the dentist this weekend. My dentist is it's a newer dentist. I've only been like 3 or 4 times, but every time I go, I get a little bit more of a glimpse into how much of a nerd she is, which is definitely a positive, because it's always fun to talk about that stuff while you're getting your teeth drilled into.
Is this the dentist or the hygienist? I've never had a female dentist. Oh, okay.
This is the dentist, yes. Yep. And she found out that I did a Star Trek podcast. She was doing my girlfriend's teeth first.
Yeah.
And then she was like, excellent.
There's a lot of talking going on in these dental appointments with you.
Well, that's what happens when you go to the dentist. A lot of one-sided conversations. And she was like, that's excellent. I have a question I want to ask him. And so she came in and like before anything else, like before I even said what was wrong or if there was anything wrong.
Do you take this insurance? Yeah.
She hits me with, so tell me if you agree with this. Everybody's like really racist towards the Ferengi, right? And I was like, yeah, they are. Like they set this world up as being like a past racism, but they are very clearly racist towards the Ferengi. She's like, I know. That's what I've thought for so long. Nobody ever listens to me when I say that. And I was like, you should listen to our podcast. I think
You have to know the URL off the top of your head for when we discuss these Ferengi things. You can go to penskypodcast.com/acquiescence or something.
Yeah. She's a big Deep Space Nine fan.
No, interesting.
Yeah.
It's a good dentist. We'll have to plug her establishment on the podcast post or something like that. No, I thought you were going to talk about teeth sharpening or something. But
no.
She instead wanted to go.
I'll ask about that. I'll ask about that next time if there's a Ferengi tier of teeth sharpening I can pay for ahead of time.
Pretty fashionable. Yeah, obviously from. If she's a fan of Deep Space Nine, she would know that the Ferengi as a group getting together, it leads to a bad episode, which is what the Klingons would do. But the Vulcans don't seem to do that for some reason, so I like them. I think that the series has just highlighted. They're probably the most important race to the franchise. I think they're versatile and like thematically important to what the show is saying about things, like in terms of like where the good life can be and like what humanity should aspire to and stuff. I think that they're kind of boring and maybe they're sort of like they've been so played out and that everyone knows about them that we kind of forget how important and vital they are. Not that every show needs to have a Vulcan on it, but a lot of the other species that the franchise or certain shows tend to think are interesting are nowhere near as interesting as the Vulcans could be.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the strange thing about it is, right? Like by the time they get to TNG, there seems to be a conscious decision to steer away from the Vulcans.
Yeah.
Because the Vulcans are not really featured on that show except for the episodes with Spock in it. I mean, there might be a couple other ones that I can't remember off the top of my head, but those are like the big ones. And It seems like that is because of this idea, I'm not saying it is because I obviously don't know, but it feels like it's this idea of like, oh, well, everybody knows the Vulcans. We don't want to, Nimoy was such a big presence on Star Trek. We don't want to hamper the show.
We want to blaze our own trail without Vulcans.
Yeah. But it's still funny to think about because in the history of Star Trek before that, there's been like 4 Vulcans, 2 of whom had more than like 3 lines.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right? Because it's been, technically, 5 Vulcans if you count Cybok. Was part 5 out before?
No, that would have been,
started?
TNG would have started before that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, either way. You've got the Vulcans from the Ponfar episode who have a couple lines. And then aside from that, it's basically Nimoy and Sarek.
Yes.
And so there's not really this blanket of Vulcan going back to the Vulcan well that it seems like
no, I guess in the motion picture you see that it's not really disproving your point. You see the Vulcan homeworld in the motion picture in a couple of them.
You get to see the blacklight poster that Nimoy that Spock lives in for 5 minutes and then that's it. It's wild actually if you think about it. Like I assume it's because of Nimoy casting such a big shadow that they don't have a regular Vulcan cast member until Voyager. Like between 1987. I mean, well, if you want to count the end of the original series, which was what 71 or something
like 69. Yeah.
There's no new Vulcan recurring character between 1969 and like 1995.
Yeah, but it feels like they're more omnipresent than that, doesn't it? Like
it does. 100%.
Yeah.
If you were to ask 10 people on the street to name 3 Star Trek alien species, 5 are they going to say, "Get the fuck out of my way, nerd." And then
will you open your mouth
5,
so I can continue filling this cavity, please?
Yeah. And then the other 4 out of 5 are going to say Vulcan is going to be one of the names they say.
Yes.
5 out of 5 even.
Yep. No, definitely. Yeah, they didn't. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's actually for the best. They didn't poison the well in the way that they did with other species by sort of overplaying their hand. And maybe as a writer, it becomes difficult to write the Vulcans. But I If I was making a Star Trek show, I'd want a Vulcan. If I was creating my show, I'd want some kind of Vulcan aspect to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Back to this.
go
ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to talk about the most important new character to the Star Trek franchise, who I'm assuming they are just teasing until the grand reveal. But when does Ensign McCormick show up?
Is there an Ensign McCormick?
Yeah, when the guy from Felicity, I believe that's the guy from Felicity, is dying at the beginning.
Oh, that's right.
He's like, I'm going to die. No one's going to miss me. And then Tuvok says, I think Ensign McCormick would miss you quite a bit. And he's like, I don't really know what that is. We don't really have a label. I'm not really sure. We haven't really had a talk about it yet.
It's complicated, and then just dies. And that's the end of it.
We just we hang out. I think there's something, but I don't know. It's tough to tell.
Should have got angry at Tuvok, been like, how do you know about her? And then just chokes on his own blood.
What did she say to you?
Why was that guy outside the shuttle?
I only assumed they crashed, and then the back of the shuttle just flapped down and just farted that guy out into a rock and
Tuvok
snapped his spine.
Tuvok just ran out of there. Didn't put his seatbelt on or something. But that guy was a good distance away from the shuttle craft. That I guess he could have just rolled out of there and hit something awkwardly, and that was the end of him. But he does say his vertebrae are shattered, so maybe that was the case. Yeah, just him and Tuvok on that vacation. Another case of the shuttles on Voyager just fucking off for a long distance to get away from the ship.
That was the thing that I was confused at going into this. And I don't know if I just wasn't listening close enough or whatever, but like when he first finds the kids, right? I can't remember if it's after I think it's they go to the credits after he finds the kids. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll take care of you. And then they go to the credits or whatever. They come back from the credits and they're on we're back on Voyager, and Janeway is like, I can't wait to talk to these new people, and they are the people who the children belong to.
Yep.
And I actually said to myself, oh, thank God. I thought this was just going to be Tuvok stuck on a moon with a bunch of kids. I'm happy to see they just jumped back onto onto Voyager, which obviously I was wrong about.
Yep.
But I just found it a little confusing because I was like, wait a minute, where are they? Does Voyager not know where they went, but are they meeting this species just completely coincidentally? This happens to be the same species?
I see what you mean. Thing? I don't know. The confusion there is Voyager doesn't know exactly where he crashed, right? So there's some sort of weird distance going on where he's close enough to find a planet and like a moon where they put their kids, which you think must be close to their planet that they're from, but he's far enough away where the ship has no idea what happens to him when he crashes, you know?
Well, they pull the old atmospheric distortion card, which I feel like they play every other episode in the show now. But yeah, because it's like there's 3 shuttlecrafts that go out, and they're like going on some sort of mission.
Yeah.
And then they know where 2 of them went, but they don't know where Tuvok was. Is that the deal?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. So I don't know. It was a fairly chaotic shuttlecraft mission, it sounds like.
I also would like to say this might be in the running for least inventive alien species
their
facial
makeup
design.
Yep. Just the veil.
Because even the makeup under the veil, it literally looks like they're wearing temporary tattoos on their foreheads. Yeah. Like you can see like that kind of translucent white seam at the edge of the temporary tattoo. Yep. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, they're mostly just I don't know if you wouldn't call them a MacGuffin or anything, but they're just really just a like bare bones alien race that they've created here, where the kids are going to be one thing, and then we're going to flip around them. But their veils I didn't really mind. I thought they potentially could have been they potentially could have been interesting in what their outlook was, but it ultimately is not important to it. How much does this one? Was this one torpedoed for you by the machinations of getting to the ending, or were you just indifferent to it once you got there?
No, I thought it was fine overall. the Tuvok and the kids stuff was actually better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And I think it is because what we were talking about, where they don't just go for the, gruff guy annoyed by children thing. He has some compassion because he is a father himself. I think that's what really makes it bearable.
Yes.
And work, if at all.
Yeah.
And the ending is, it's just a really strange, like I feel like they could have done something else, because it's just such a left field pull that I don't feel like really adds anything thematically or anything.
No,
it's just
no.
It's just an excuse. And like, even when they're talking about that monster that they think is there, and the woman is like, "Oh no, that's fake. You're just gonna die."
Yes, that's the weird part too. It's not even like it's a religious ceremony where they keep up the literal veil around what's going on. Like, she tells them. I guess a lot of it is just getting away with, like, the reason they talk to you like this is because they're basically senile at this point and they don't really know what's going on, which is, I don't know. I was a little struck by the ending where, what they're doing isn't necessarily wrong, but the little girl didn't want to be there either at that point. Right. And so it's like, well,
it's the equivalent. It's the space equivalent of dumping your grandmother off in a nursing home and just leaving.
Yeah, and say and if someone befriends her, to be like, you leave her alone. She's gonna die here. Like, this is the way I paid for this. This is going to happen. And also, if you're close to death, with this species, wouldn't that mean that this woman has another 8 to 10 years left before she turns into a baby and then dies?
It is unclear if it is an exact Benjamin Button situation where she does in fact have to age into a baby form before she dies.
I think they have to.
Seems to not be the case, but yeah, I wonder, does it work better, and do you have a little bit more time to sit with this stuff if you reveal this to at least Tuvok earlier? So he knows what's going on, and he then chooses to stay with her, that kind of thing. Yeah. Maybe he finds, maybe the scene where they're trying to fly away, but they can't quite get out. Maybe that's where he finds out. And so he ends up going back. It sucks because if you are playing, if you're putting the weight of a story twist and reveal onto this thing, then you really can't do that, because then in order for that to work, you have to obviously keep it a secret. You can't just be saying what's going on.
Yep.
But I think it might be a little bit more narratively and thematically rewarding if at least Tuvok does know what's going on at some point, because then he's there, a father of four, sitting with both a vision of his future in more than one way, where he's got a child that he is what's the word I'm looking for?
Heading home to, or taking care of?
No, he's got a child that he's bonding with here on the planet that reminds him of his own child, but then he also is bonding with someone who's at the end of their life.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Is he looking at this child and thinking about, his own child at the end of their life? And, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff you could get into, but it would require a fundamental restructuring of everything. Yeah.
I think that's the problem. And it seems like it's a kind of a Voyager trope at this point, is that it's what I was talking about earlier. There is stuff for Tuvok as a character to talk about and be concerned about in this episode. Mm-hmm. And they mention it, but it doesn't really go on anything beyond the fact that Tuvok has children, therefore he is okay at talking to these kids and getting along with them. Because a lot of his emotional, or a lot of his connection to them, if you don't want to say it's an emotional Vulcan connection, is probably, to me, the fact that he's being reminded about his own kids, which he maybe doesn't think about or at least the show doesn't have him think about, because it's not like the show isn't set up for him to be concerned about his kids the whole time. That's just not the way it works. Yeah. So it's a good reminder here for him, but it's you just don't really learn anything about what Tuvok thinks about the situation for that, or how this impacts him. And that's the problem with the reverse aging thing, is that it doesn't, even if Tuvok knows about it, it doesn't really change the algebra too much for him. Like, he'd have to just explicitly start talking about his kids at that point, and maybe not seeing them and dying. And there are threads there, but it doesn't feel like it's really woven together too well to do like a cohesive story about something about Tuvok.
Yeah, you never get to the point of Ripley and Newt here. And I don't mean like action wise, but just, that Aliens is so good in that way, by very slyly and adeptly setting up this motherhood story for Ripley that is followed through completely through the whole movie. And you find you believe the bonding between those two without ever really having to talk about it.
Yes.
And here you don't really get that. Like they never get to that point. And I think that the reveal at the end does kind of undercut it a bit, but it is what it is. They really Voyager really starting to get in the way of a lot of culture's funerary rites, huh? Is this the second time they've done that?
Harry Kim, I guess, is the first one. There might be a second one somewhere. Yeah, it's the alien Delta Quadrant. You just can't predict what people are going to be doing with their dead bodies.
Also, who's the person behind the scenes at Voyager that clearly really wants to kill some children on screen? Because they are just really dancing around it. Last episode, they killed that one baby, but then it's okay because the other baby took the place. Yep. And then this one, they killed 2 children, but it's okay because they're actually 90 years old. What are we driving towards here?
Maybe 96 isn't even old for this species. Maybe they live to be 752 or something on average, and they're just out there dying. Yeah, it's too bad. I guess we can go to the patron thoughts now, see if they have anything else to say about this one. But it was I thought this episode was fine, but we'll have final thoughts for it too. Innocence. If you guys want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File. You leave a couple dollars, you get to leave a couple thoughts about this as well. Patreon.com/the Pensky File. So let's go there now. Our first comment is Clef. I'm just opening up your little window here. Excuse me. Innocence. The show is all about Tuvok, marooned with 3 kids on a rock. Russ is acting as rad as a pretty cool dad, but the contrived plot smells like writer's block. 3 Benjamin Buttons out of 5. Kyle Barrett. I'll send this one over to you. Do.
Innocence. I wish all kid-focused Star Trek episodes would have the kids die at the end. This is a very TNG feeling episode, from the planet to the diplomacy, and I wish there was more of a Voyager slant on things. It's also an episode where everything could be solved if the aliens explained things earlier, and I don't think it plays fair with what the kids say happened to them. The weird Benjamin Button twist is completely nonsense from the mind of Carl Pilkington and ruins the thematic work of Tuvok interacting with the children. There's a sprinkle of Tuvok character work, but mainly just fluffy, cutesy bollocks of a Vulcan having to deal with irritating children. And this is probably Jimmy Savile's favorite planet because he could diddle the kids and get away with it because they are actually adults. 2 pedophiles lurking in a cave out of 5.
Thanks very much.
I guess a lot of cultural touchstones. In that comment.
a lot of pop culture. I guess I don't really have anything else to add on to that. The Voyager slash is just Tuvok. But
did I tell you when I first got into The Prisoner, I was, just looking for different stuff and resources online and whatnot, and I found this one blog that had a really interesting long form breakdown of a lot of different elements of The Prisoner.
Yep.
And you're clicking on links and stuff because you're thinking, okay, well, if these people are into this, maybe some of these other things that they like or these websites that they follow, blah blah blah, but might lead me to more Prisoner stuff. And after like a handful of clicks, I came across this blog that was a full-throated defense of Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
And like it was like a dense tome of why Jimmy Savile was actually innocent. And I didn't know how I got there, but like I've never seen anybody else even attempt to make that argument, so I don't know.
You found
one
it
man
convincing?
alone. Oh, absolutely. I think he was totally railroaded. No, it was just very strange. It's like there's always something on the internet, it's no matter, it's the algorithm in action where you keep clicking long enough and you end up
down the rabbit hole,
defending pedophiles and storming the Capitol.
You're down the alien cave of this episode, just getting diddled by that alien that's down there, the ghost of Christmas Past or whatever. Taxel Bear says, Innocence, I'm not going to ask how fully grown Drayans, I guess that's what their name is, give birth to one another. However, I am going to ask what kind of sense this reverse aging process makes, which is none at all. Also, the Drayan leader's comments about the Voyager crew aging in reverse from their perspective and thus not aging normally wouldn't feel as hollow if that wasn't how 99.99% of all the species in the galaxy seem to work. It's true. They're the weirdos. Not me. Eric McGowan, I always like Tuvok episodes even when they aren't really any good. This episode isn't too bad until the end when the twist is revealed about the aliens aging backwards. It's a gotcha moment for the audience, but it doesn't make any logical sense why the kids wouldn't have told Tuvok sooner, and it kind of undermines the earlier parts of the story. 2 out of 5. Yeah, because your point was to thematically tie them together to make Tuvok think that he's older. I mean, I know that you said that you had to reconfigure the whole story to make that work. I guess that's my big hang up on it, is that it's about Tuvok and kids for 99% of it, and then all of a sudden it's not. And then like it's just like Tuvok doesn't have a moment of like, wait, like Tuvok being full of grace, as I want the Vulcans to be, just rolls with it and is like, well, I was wrong there, but you might as well just die with some dignity over here. It is kind of a wonky donkey ending.
I wonder if there's another version, like an earlier version, where it's not that they are actually old, but it's just that there's like basically everything remains the same except they're just kids who have some very limited lifespan or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And maybe that's
They're
too much
family.
Maybe that's too much of a downer, and like it needs some more sci-fi spin, because if you don't have that, then there's really no sci-fi stuff in this episode.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. I don't know.
I guess I was realizing that when she's like, what do we do when they're flying off in the shuttlecraft? And the girl's like, what do we do now? And Tuvok's like, well, you can apply for asylum on Voyager. And it's like, okay, so there's some misunderstanding going on here, because the girl has to go home, and I doubt they're going to kill the girl at this point. So that's what it is.
You are
Wrong. Concito, this one's short. I'll read this one too. I generally hate episodes with kids in them, but for some reason this one feels better. Maybe it's because Tuvok makes a great super dad. 3 out of 5. Do people dislike episodes with kids, or just Star Trek episodes with kids? A lot of people have said they don't want kids in the episode.
I would assume it's a general thing.
I just think of the there's a TNG, like Imaginary Friend from TNG is a young child thing, and I always think of that when they mention bad kid episodes, and that is a pretty bad episode. But I'm trying to think of any others. Is Jake Sisko a child? Does he count as a child, or is that
he's
is he
probably
too old?
just out? Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if that totally. I think it's just that with younger kids, it's so rare to get a good
performance.
It's a combination of it's rare to get a really great performance, and it's rare to get someone who can actually write believably for a child.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think it's those two things generally make it kind of a bit of a chore.
I'm sure kids don't have the easiest time with Star Trek dialogue either. It is not written to their strengths.
And it's always like you're watching a show that never really has kids in it, and then all of a sudden has kids, but the kids are saying like, my dad told me I needed to get my lunch before the second semester was over. And so 5-year-olds don't talk like they don't know what semesters are.
Yep.
You're saying that because you're an old person, and the last school you know is college.
You're 96 years old, lady. No, I understand.
Unless they're meant to be precocious like that Jerry Maguire kid.
Yeah. And he is, with his glasses and his little pug nose.
I bet that kid was at January 6th.
He's
the character.
Not the actor.
The actor. I'm sure he's a lovely person. I bet that character was there, though.
He's definitely... What was that? I can't remember what that kid's name is. Amy loves Jerry Maguire. I've seen that movie so many times. This is Changeling. I just sent it to you.
This could have been a great episode to watch in October as it combines two of my greatest fears, spending time with children and elderly people with dementia.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just another lukewarm Voyager episode with a lukewarm twist. As a side note, to make those kids shut up, Tuvok shouldn't have taught them about meditation, but about the barely contained murderous rage he is suppressing every day. 2 curious cases of Benjamin Button out of 5. The first line of that comment reminded me. We were just talking about Austin Powers recently for no reason, and it reminded me of one of my favorite jokes from the third movie, which is when Michael Caine says, "There's only 2 things that I hate in this world: people who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch."
Yep, it's a good one.
Yeah.
What's with the are the Dutch like a because there's the famous Office BBC version. He's browsing like porn sites on the work computer, and it's like Dutch girl with big boobs must be punished. And he's like no woman, Dutch or otherwise, should be punished for having large breasts. I don't know. Maybe it's the word, but they seem to have an infatuation with the Dutch. Matt Ross says, Innocence always makes me feel sad in its exploration of death. The Benjamin Button stuff, which never makes sense, and the wearing of a stocking on your face always annoyed me. Of course, kids out of control is something we can all relate to and use Vulcan calm in real life to varying degrees of success. In my head, I always see Baby Herman from Roger Rabbit as one of the kids with the Brooklyn accent and cigar, which would make the episode loads better. 2.5 kids out of 5.
I guess we never considered that maybe the reason that they were so cold towards Voyager. I mean, they're wearing those stockings on their heads. Maybe they caught them on their way to a robbery or something.
I know. It's hard to identify who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Give me your, let me speak to your leader. Yeah, they, it's funny because there's long stretches of they talk to the doctor for a while and stuff, but it's ultimately just not.
I do really like that they talk to the doctor and then they're like, "We need to go immediately." The doctor's like, "Was it my fault?"
Yeah, what did I say? I've been working on this presentation. Kess has been helping me. And just because everyone's talked about the kids, I thought the kids were pretty good in this. Actually,
yeah, they were.
Yeah, I thought they were.
One of them was Taj Mowry, the brother of Tia and Tamara Mowry of Sister.
Oh, nice.
So
Is he doing anything now? Or I don't know what happened to those two either.
I have no idea.
I can send this one to you. Did I read the last one? I think I did. I read Matt Ross. This is Jaron Hatch with the next comment about Innocence.
The concept is cute enough, even if the idea is as old as Benjamin Button, or is that as young as Benjamin Button? Whatever, childhood and old age are scary and poignantly similar. Who cares? The only reason why this is as good as it is because of the interactions between Tuvok and the kids. Tim Russ rides that line between cold logic and paternal compassion beautifully, and he gives a wonderfully nuanced performance. After watching this episode, I'm confident in saying that Russ plays second fiddle only to Nimoy when it comes to playing Vulcans. 3 forgettably dead ensigns out of 5.
What'd you think of his Vulcan song?
That was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be bad, and then he settled into it. And I was like, all right, this is fine. This is acceptable. Oh, it has something like 300 verses or whatever he says, and then he's going to get to the point.
Skip the
extended bridge.
Very rarely sang racist fourth verse.
Point Extra G says, Innocence, going down to the planet and finding nothing but children means some kind of sci-fi shenanigans are afoot. How well you can stomach child actors will probably affect your opinion of this one. Tuvok is really great in this, and I enjoyed seeing his take on a Vulcan parent. Not the most original story, but it's solid. The aliens veil headwear thing is kind of weird, though. Do we learn any do we learn any specific Vulcan parenting techniques in this? He doesn't really speak about that much, does he?
Just the lute thing.
Yeah, just singing the song, playing the lute. But there's no like parental advice or like he doesn't. I don't think there's anything specific about it, which is too bad.
By the way, the answer is not much to what Taj Mowry is doing these days.
That's too bad.
He's apparently going to be in the Muppet Show that's coming out pretty soon.
Oh, okay.
But aside from that, it's the usual. Like he was in some network sitcoms and released an EP in the last 5 or 6 years.
Gotcha.
But who hasn't, right?
Exactly. Aaron Carter's dead. We'll just timestamp this episode.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yes.
So this just happened.
So you win the bet.
That's right. We had my 2022 prediction came out right. Let's see here. This is Aaron Million with this comment I just sent you.
Innocence. At the beginning of this one, I thought another Star Trek episode that focuses on kids, those usually suck. But this one didn't, largely because of Tim Russ continuing to develop his character. Despite being a full Vulcan, not only half like Spock, Tuvok is exhibiting some human traits while being restrained by Vulcan mind control and logic. I believe that's just control over the Vulcan mind, not Vulcan mind control. The downside to this episode, Wesley Crusher wasn't one of the kids since they all die. 3 imaginary cave monsters out of 5.
What happened to where did those kids' bodies go when they leave their clothes behind in the cave?
I don't know. Do they just like
melt?
Force ghost away?
I don't know.
Like Yoda?
There's also I was watching this on the iPad. It was incredibly difficult to see what was going on in that cave scene. I mean, I got the gist of it, but all it was just I just saw like a shred of clothing, and then Tuvok walked out of the cave, and I had to assume what was going on. Maybe the bodies were there, and I just missed it.
I didn't see them there. I assumed that they just like
phase into another reality.
Disappear. Yeah.
Patrick Seba says, bastardized Plato and all those kid actors. Tuvok sings a song, Kill Me Sweet Benefactors. He looked, didn't clutch. Thank God Berman can't touch. The script, which was fine, just fine. It was fine. It was fine. 2 discount cheesecloth turned gimp masks out of 5. Is this all one comment? It is. So this is Brandon Neal Howells, who I will send to you.
Innocence. The title should be Ignorance, as the kids have no idea what is happening to them. If the Dryans age backwards, are they born old? Alcia's great-grandfather led an anti-technology movement, which resulted in the Dryans becoming 1, isolationists, 2, apiarists, and 3, absolutely terrible communicators.
I guess they are anti-technology, if Brandon's comment is to be believed, yeah.
Why doesn't Alcia tell Janeway what's going on? Meanwhile, Tuvok, stranded on the moon with the annoying kids, is tolerable except for the part where he sings the kids to sleep, and then it really shines. When Tuvok enters the cave in search of the Morok, I expect him to see a vision of Darth Vader and strike it down. This episode could have been so much better. 2 propositioning Chakotay's out of 5.
When is Chakotay propositioned?
Oh, he tells the story about when he really wanted to go on the first contact, and so he learned everything there was to learn about the species, and then
that's right.
He said he thought he was saying hello, but he was actually like
saying, "Give me a hand job,"
doing the tongue through the 2 fingers thing.
What a misunderstanding. Yep. Matt Cabanas Adley says, get out of here, pop-up. You know who I would pick as a coach for diplomacy? Certainly not the captain of a starship or the former captain of a ship now serving as first officer, nor the 150-year-old Vulcan who successfully went undercover. Not even the Delta Quadrant native who knows more about species in a region than anyone else on the ship combined. Nope. Clearly the choice is the literal 2-year-old who has spent her entire short life either underground or on Voyager. 4 Vulcan children out of 5. Let me go here. Excuse me. This is Artorius with this comment to you.
No sense.
No sense.
No, you missed the eye there.
I did.
Nocene?
It's a brand new Italian pasta.
Is it Italian?
Nocene.
While watching this in the beginning, I was thinking to myself, wow, Tuvok is great with kids. He would make a great babysitter. Then as the episode progressed and the kids disappeared, I was like, wow, dude, what happened to watching over the kids? You make a horrible babysitter. Good thing Vulcan children don't run off and act rebellious. Otherwise, the infant mortality rate would be higher, not to mention hospital bills. Technically senile old people for this episode, which kind of ruined it for me. 2 out of 5.
We've seen... this is a good place to bring this up. So I've talked before about one thing that I do not like about the Vulcans is that after they were created and existed for a while, they did like the like midi-chlorians in the Jedi thing where they try to explain why the Vulcans are this way by like there are episodes that say they have like a brain evolution that like prevents emotion and stuff like that.
Yeah, when Archer had the pointy thing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. The point, if you don't get to the pointy thing, you have to evolve somehow and get around that.
Sure.
And I think that we've seen Vulcan kids in Discovery. I don't know if we've seen Vulcan kids anywhere else, but
just in the movies, like the Abrams movies, they had some.
Oh, they had some in that one. There's maybe there's one or two, but they're definitely in Discovery. I don't know if maybe they've been somewhere else, but that would be one thing where it perhaps, I guess my whole point is that the Vulcan children, if I were to design the Vulcans, Vulcan children would act like human kids. They wouldn't act like Vulcans, to get away from this idea that they just like have a brain stem that's different and that prevents them.
Yeah,
I think that the Vulcan kids should have to learn how to act like their parents do over the course of their lives.
They kind of do that in the Abrams movie, but not in the way that you would like them to.
Sure.
Where they act like Vulcans, but the stuff they're saying is like...
childish shit about like Bluey and watching Clifford and stuff like that on TV. Yeah.
Spock, we've heard that your mother is so fat that when she sits around the house, she really sits around the house. Now give me your lunch money or I will punch you in the face. Yeah,
just a big raised eyebrow. That stuff. That's what I would do. I don't know if that would help this episode. Maybe I guess it would give Tuvok a way to talk to the kids early on about it if he's just accustomed to it. I just don't like this idea that Vulcan children are just like their parents, just smaller versions of them. I think that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Jakey's Gamer says, it's a short one, Innocence. Tuvok is good in this and the ending is sweet, but getting there awake is a bit of a struggle. I'll agree with that. I fell asleep the first time through this one. Malif Pervoso says, Innocence, 1 out of 5, !
Wow.
And then the final comment, who I will send to you, is from Nick the Rat. With a 1 out of 5, I feel like I need the explanation as to why it's a 1 out of 5. This is Nick the Rat to you.
Sorry. I didn't see that you sent it. Innocence. Tuvok could have at least told the dying guy the captain will miss him instead of just an ensign. That's a good point. Yeah, he's not even like, you were really good at your job and we all enjoyed being around you. He's like, I think there's one lady who probably misses you. The ship and crew all look like new after it was all almost destroyed last episode. Very cool. If only the ambassador let Voyager know about the kids on the moon before waiting till they fired upon them, this entire episode could have been avoided. Yet, I'd pay money to watch more Tuvok daycare. 4 dead 96-year-old kids out of 5.
The sequence of the shuttles attacking each other, flying off, is a terrible Star Trek thing that they start doing from this point onward into Enterprise and stuff. I really don't like that stuff. Same with Tom Paris and Janeway going down in the shuttle. Those are just bad, boring scenes.
I actually liked the scene when they were getting ready to go, where Paris is trying to like go through all the protocols and Janeway's just like lock and load.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of fun, but that whole scene, that was one of those scenes where it's like, that's a first draft kind of scene that you really need to rethink, where it's like, okay, we've got them. Janeway and Paris are going to go down there to get Tuvok. And then what's the next scene? It's Tuvok flying up, and then the Dryans or whatever they're called. They're flying at them. And then Janeway and Paris are there. Okay, great. Then what happens? Everybody turns around.
Yeah. It's even more, it's like, it's like that's what everyone's doing. It's like, what's going on in the scenes? You're like, nothing.
Right.
This is exactly it. It gets like
Tuvok's having trouble with the ignition.
The girl character is surprised that the engine starts, and she's relieved.
Yeah.
I mean, Paris is there at the ending, and he serves no purpose. It's just one of those strange kind of things. I don't know. I wouldn't have even had. I don't even know if Janeway and Paris needed to be there at the to make it down to the planet for any reason. I think it was fine. All right, that's it. Thanks, patrons, for leaving your thoughts about this one called Innocence. I guess the patrons probably averaged that to a 3.5 out of that one. Clay, what are you going to give this one on our scale of 1 to 5?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah.
I think it was not bad.
Yeah, it's a 3, I think. Definitely a 3. Could have been a lot worse, maybe. I thought it worked out just fine. I agree with it. I think it was Kyle's comment. It does feel like a TNG episode, like a not very good TNG episode, just in the sort of setup and design of like how how the story's set up, basically being stuck on a planet on a shuttlecraft with mystery people.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit of difference between this and Enterprise, because this still has some clunkiness to the episodes, whereas Enterprise was all like structurally fairly sound, but it was just boring.
Just boring. Yeah. Yeah, it's that's true, I think. I just trying to think of how else it would be. It is sort of a halfway love child of TNG and Enterprise. It has like the those aspects of both of those shows. So it is a real Voyager's probably a real changing of the guard in terms of where the shows go after this point and how they look and stuff. That's it. We both give it a 3. It's Innocence. That's the end of that one. Not going to be a very memorable episode with Voyager said and done, I don't think, but it was fine for what it was. Thank you, everybody. Patreon.com/The Pensky File if you want to support the show there. A couple of dollars, you get extra stuff, all the good stuff. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
Badass should be back pretty soon. If it's not back already when this comes out, Sean and I have been banking some new episodes. October is we started kind of late into the year, and October is just like the busiest month of the year for me, so we got kind of delayed, but we should be back on the horse just in time for him to be done with Batman Beyond. We were recording the other day, and I was like, are we even going to want to do this in like 2 months, because you're going to be done with this book? It's like what the hell else do we want? Are you going to still want to talk about Batman Beyond, or are you going to want to just like jettison all that shit from your mind? But he seemed to think we'll still be moving forward. So as long as he wants to do it, I'll keep doing it.
Prepare. How many episodes are in left? Because are you in the final season of Beyond?
No, we just started. We'll be starting season 2. There's 3 seasons. 3 seasons. The second season, I think, is the longest season with maybe like 20 episodes or something.
Yeah.
I think the third one's a little truncated because I think it might have gotten canceled or something. I can't remember.
Gotcha. Badass will return.
And we're rounding out Second String with Stephen King on Rotten Horror Picture Show Patreon.
Yep.
And this month we ran our poll to see what we're going to do next year. And if you want to know what the answer was, you're going to have to listen to the show.
Yeah.
And then next month, this month we're doing Pet Sematary. Next month we'll be doing Stephen King's It from 1990. And we will also be saying which movies will be on our 12 movie list for 2023. Assuming, the world still exists then.
And I think this month we're going to be doing Garth Marenghi's Dark Place on Patreon
nice.
as our thing, because that won the poll. So we'll do that. I have not seen it. I think you've seen it, but I have not.
I have, yeah, it's good.
So I'm ready to prepare myself for that. I always enjoy short British series.
Yeah, I'm very curious how you're gonna react to that show, because it is very silly.
Yeah.
So yeah, this will be interesting.
Laughing time is over. Let's see. I guess we're done. Yeah, so tune in for that. And otherwise, the usual stuff. End of the year, holiday stuff. We'll be moving on. We'll probably do a Christmas episode. Maybe we haven't done a Thanksgiving movie yet. Maybe we should do a Thanksgiving movie for November.
There are so few.
Yeah,
like what we were considering doing holiday horror movies. That was one of the choices on the poll, and there's like 3 horror movies that take place at Thanksgiving, and they're all terrible.
I'm trying to think of a non-horror movie that takes place at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I can't think of any. I keep thinking of like Home Alone, but it's all Christmas.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Let me see. Holiday.
It's strange, isn't it? Because like
movies around Thanksgiving.
Do you think it has to do with Thanksgiving being a explicitly American holiday for the most part, at least the way that we celebrate it? Because I mean, like Christmas, everybody knows Christmas, but Thanksgiving, even though it is a national holiday that everyone in this country is familiar with, like it's not like there's no movies about Canadian Thanksgiving either. You know what I mean?
That's true. Or like Boxing Day in Britain or something like that. So I guess Wakanda Forever came up as like number 1.
I hope so. Oh man, if Wakanda Forever is about the Wakandans and Namor's people celebrating Thanksgiving, sign me the fuck up for that.
There's actually a Rotten Tomatoes list of the 28 greatest Thanksgiving movies.
I can't believe there's 28.
I know 2 of them, maybe 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Grumpy Old Men.
Technically, is Rocky a Thanksgiving movie?
Let me see.
No, because he fights Apollo. Not. He fights Apollo on the bicentennial, I think, in '76. But I think the beginning of the movie takes place on Thanksgiving. So I think it crosses Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Oh, okay. We just don't spend any time at Thanksgiving, unfortunately. He's not listed. Well, not listed on here.
Polly throws a turkey at Adrian and then calls her a
that's
slut,
right.
But aside from that.
Yeah. The Blind Side is one. The Big Chill. You've Got Mail?
Big Chill.
I thought it was a Christmas
There's a whole
movie.
article on Den of Geek called Rocky Movies and the Importance of Thanksgiving.
The highest one that I would watch is, well, Charlie Brown's Christmas, or Thanksgiving, sorry, is number 1. And then Scent of a Woman, I guess, is one of them. So I don't know.
Hoo-ah.
Hoo-ah. All right, well, I don't want to watch any of these Thanksgiving movies, so maybe we won't do that. Maybe we'll do a Christmas movie. All right, we're done. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We will see you next time with the next episode of Star Trek Voyager, which I don't know what it is. So we'll see you then.